Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whether you're watching us live or on replay. Thank you so much for joining us and thank you for being here. As always, my name is Baiba and I'm excited to be here with you. And Happy New Year! Happy New Year to all of those who I haven't yet met or engaged with this year. I'm hoping and wishing you all a year of strong health, abundance, and I hope you're blessed with everything that you need on your journey ahead. And let's not bring any 2021 energy into 2022. This has to be a different kind of year for us. But I'm extra excited for this year because I got to start this year with an announcement, which was yesterday, about the launch of Coop, the DEI community, which will launch on Wednesday, the 19th of January, 4 p.m. GMT. So you can join the members list on Coop website. I would love to see you there. I would love to engage with you there. And I would love to connect, grow, and co-create something very, very special with you there. So thank you already to those who have signed up. I've seen some familiar names and some new names in the green room, in the members waiting room, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, thank you for that. But today we are here to unpack that new year, new me energy and take a deep dive in what it actually means and what it looks like in real life. And why we want to talk about disrupting, reinventing, innovating self is because this time, so end of an old year and beginning of a new year, is a time when a lot of us take a moment to reflect on how the year has gone, and how and what kind of energy and what kind of goals and aspirations we want to cultivate in the year ahead. So it's a time for us to reflect on who we are and who we want to be. And I feel that myself and my guest for today, and my colleague and my friend, Mae Brunson, we both have a thing or two to say about this, as we have been through this washing machine process of reinventing ourselves, but probably a time too many. And so I couldn't imagine a better person to join me here today to talk about creating and finding the courage, because it takes a lot of courage to disrupt and reinvent self. So before I allow my lovely guest to introduce herself, I just want to once again thank everyone who is joining us, whether it's live or whether it's in replay. Please use the comments section to share any of your reflections, whether you have got that new year, new me vibe going. And any questions, please put them in the comments as well, and I will be putting them up as we go. So without further ado, Mae Brunson, thank you so much for being here with me, and I would love for you to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you so much, Baiba. I am honored to sit here with you today and talk about something that, again, like you mentioned, we're all grappling with at the new year. It's about reinventing self. And as you were talking, I was thinking about, before I get into who I am, I was just thinking about how we collectively do take that inventory of the year and reflect and think about all the things that we could have done, should have done, will do ahead. And one of the things I was thinking about is like, why do we do that? Why do we use the beginning of the year to do that when we should be doing that continuously? And I'll talk about that aha moment when I had, in the middle of the year last year, when I was like, let's reinvent myself. But before I go there, let me introduce myself. My name is Mae Brunson. I am the founder of Wonder Women Tech, which is a global ecosystem that highlights, celebrates, educates, and amplifies women, BIPOC, and underrepresented in STEM and the arts. I get to work with FIBA as well on that adventure, but also very big on the DEI space and really educating and coaching Fortune 500 companies, government entities, and our communities to think consciously and ethically about inclusion and belonging. So I'm very excited to be here with you, Baiba, and to explore what it actually means to have courage, because I absolutely believe that it takes a lot of guts to really look at yourself, look at your business, look at your ideas, look at your vision, and reimagine or reinvent the possibilities of what it can become, and also to admit where it might not be working anymore, and you have to actually reimagine and go back to the mats, if you will.
100%, and thank you for the introduction. To those who still don't know who Lisa Mae is, this is for you. But you're absolutely right. You know, this reinvention is about becoming and growing and journeying together. And so let's begin with this conversation with what it means to reinvent. And when I looked at the Cambridge English Dictionary, it defines reinvention as, one, to produce something new that is based on something that already exists, and two, to change your job and or the way you look and behave so you seem very different. And I think these are brilliant. And I think they are also a very good point to start our conversation. But I think the thing about reinvention is that we have a somewhat skewed view about the work that's involved in reinventing yourself, the sweat, the blood, the tears that goes into it. And the TV, the novels that we read, social media, adverts, they don't talk about that. They glamorize to what real change and transformation and disruption and reinvention actually looks like. So before I go into the rabbit hole and say any more, I would love to hear from you, Lisa Mae. To what does reinventing yourself or reinventing self means to you?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about all the stupid movies we watch that we love secretly and not so secretly. You know, like She's All That, He's All That. Like it just takes this new putting on new clothes, taking off the glasses, and putting on makeup, which I think is so sexist, by the way. But it's interesting when I was listening to the definition about, creating something that is so that it looks different or that it is different. And I want to argue against that in the sense of what we're talking about, because when I, and this is just my humble opinion, right? So when I think about reinventing myself, when I think about it from a personal perspective, I'm thinking about reimagining. I love that word, reimagining the possibilities of who I can become and what Wonder Women Tech can become, and how that impact can be distributed, right? Whether it's personally or it's organizationally or mission led, right? Mission driven. What does that look like? And the thing is that you have to start from a foundation. Reinvention is taking something that already exists, yes, and reimagining the possibilities, but you're starting with the foundation that already exists, and that shouldn't be taken lightly. And I think so many of us, when we are thinking about pivoting, which so many of us are, we're in the great resignation, which somebody dubbed. I call it the great economic renaissance. This is a time where we do get to reimagine, and we get to step outside of all the boxes. Rules don't apply anymore. So it's sort of like, do I give myself permission? Because I think so many of us are rooted in our belief systems around and our structure that we've built inside of these foundations we've created. I know that when I wanted to reimagine Wonder Women Tech, and you were right there with me, I was still rooted in what was and what is and what we've already done, that it was hard for me to think outside the box of the possibilities. Like I was still stuck in the shackles of like what we've done it this way for 9 years. This is how we've always done it. Yes, I want to change, but I don't know what that looks like. So the first thing is like thinking about giving yourself permission to do something completely different, and to think differently, and to bring other people into your toolbox, bring in other people with different skill sets and resources, educating yourself, taking classes, arming yourself with new information that you don't currently have. And that's really what is the next step. Like once you decide I want to pivot, I want to reimagine, I need to reinvent myself. 2021 was cray cray. I want 2022 to be better. Or, you can even apply that to the pandemic wiped me out. I have to pivot. I want to pivot in a new direction. So what do I need to do that? And you have to take inventory of that. It's not just, oh, I'm going to go do this and you go do it. You actually there's work involved, as you said, like the nuts and bolts and the tears, and it's not easy work, right? So arming yourself with the people, the resources, the education that it takes to rebuild on top of the foundation, and giving yourself grace in the process of that, because, you don't have to dismantle the whole thing. And I think that's the danger of this concept, is that you have to take apart every single thing. Remember, I was pushing back on you about this too, about like, well, this is foundation, like this is the foundation that we've built on. Yes, we want to dismantle the floors, but the foundation is still the foundation. And so, that's something that I think is so important in this conversation, is you don't have to take apart everything. You don't have to reinvent your entire self or your entire business model, but use what has worked for you and be willing to bring in the people, have the resources, and do a deep dive into learning new skills to allow you to progress forward.
I love that. Armor yourself with information, people, and resources, and give yourself grace on the journey ahead. I absolutely love that. And for those who are just joining us now, we are today talking about creating and finding the courage to disrupting and reinventing ourselves. And the reason for this conversation is because obviously we are at the beginning of the year where everyone is immersing themselves in new year, new me, new career energy. And we just want to take that apart and really dig deep to what that actually means. And as I was listening to you, there is this beautiful quote by Rebecca Solent that she quoted in her book, The Far Away Nearby. And I'm going to quote how she describes transformation, which I absolutely love. And she says, and I quote, "Even earthquakes are the consequences of tensions built up over long spans of time, imperceptibly, incrementally. You don't notice the build-up, just the release. In movies and novels, people change suddenly and permanently, which is convenient and dramatic, but not much like real life, where you gain distance on something, relapse, resolve, try again, and move along in stops and starts and stutters. Change is mostly slow." And this paragraph really resonated with me on so many levels when I first read it, because change is interesting. It is abrupt at first during that breakup or breakdown or some realization or announcement, but after that it's slow. And the movies and the adverts and social media doesn't show the journey after. The realization is beautiful, and that's where it ends. But that journey afterwards that's what really takes courage and a lot of work. And similar as I have reinvented myself several times, both professionally and personally. Sometimes I have been forced to do it, and sometimes an opportunity has opened itself up. And I think since the pandemic, as you already mentioned, we have all been forced to reinvent ourselves because the circumstances have made us working from home, lockdowns, cancelled holidays, homeschooling. It completely has disrupted our family, social, and professional lives. And myself, in the pandemic, I moved from being reasonably comfortable in my corporate job to facing a redundancy and then starting my own business at the back of that. So that is a learning journey in its own, and reinventing and recalibrating your own brain and whole being, and detaching the identity that you had before and how you defined and labeled yourself before. Then 2021, my health came crashing down, as Rebecca Solnit in the book described, there was this tension that was building up over a long period of time, which I didn't notice. All I noticed was the release, or that breakdown that happened. And it happened in February last year. So the rest of my 2021, I was rumbling with reinventing myself. And that followed by another conscious reinvention, this time around shifting from being a consultant to being a coach and reimagining my service offering and products based on that. I also made a decision to leave the UK after 10 years of living there, embracing a lifestyle as a nomad, because I realized that living there was compromising and often overstepping my values. And so now thinking about it, I have spent the past 2 years in a constant reinvention and discomfort. But God, the level of growth that has come out of it, it has been the most painful and most challenging process of my adult life. And as much as I shiver just thinking about that whole experience, I'm equally grateful for the transformation, for this transformational opportunity that I have been given. And so, and in my case, I just talked about, and also what I have seen from my time working with organizations is that change is the most requested and equally the most hated activity. And so organizations, same as us, don't know when to start. So what would you say, Lisa May, is a good indicator that it is time to reinvent?
I'm full of so many thoughts with everything you've shared. I love what you said about rumbling with reinvention, and I think what and how many times have we heard this? But look, it's real. The pandemic shifted everything, right? It created an environment in which all of us collectively had to realize like what was not and has not been working on a societal level, on an economic level, on a corporate level, on a workplace environment level, from a founder raising funding, keeping the lights on perspective. It wiped out so many people's incomes, including ours. It eliminated complete industries that are still trying to recover. The events industry, the live events industry. We thought we were, going to have a breather and be able to do conferences again. And now, just yesterday, I've had to talk about changing our dates for May, right? Like, change is all around us and has always been around us. But I think because we've been indoctrined into this 9-to-5 mentality, this is what work life looks like. There is no such thing as balance. We operate, and I'm talking like this, like purely by accident, but it's also, but it's monotonous, right? This is the roles that we step into. This is our day-to-day operations. This is how we do things. These are the systems. Nobody questions anything. But what's happening underneath the surface, and this is what I love about the quote you talked about, is that rumbling of dissatisfaction and like pressure and burnout that continues to be like put on top of more burnout, year after year after year, not being addressed, right? So we have collectively and you were in the UK, now you're in South America. I'm here in the US. We have folks in Canada. We have folks everywhere. We all feel the same thing. It's that same pressure, right, that has been building up because none of us questioned the status quo. And even those of us in the DEI space who've been trying to push for change, but it's been incremental. That's why we talk about pushing a stupid needle forward, which indicates incremental change. So we have been collectively wired into thinking incremental change, these small little minute changes for an entire ecosystem is enough when it's not, clearly. So the pandemic created an environment where it was like shit's on fire and everything changed. Corporate doesn't know what the hell to do, We're trying to figure it out. Can we work remotely? Oh shit, not only can we work remotely, our teams are performing better because hello, like there's a little bit more balance and they don't have to sit in 2 hours of traffic to get here. And they're not like, you know what I mean? Like they're working on different terms. They're working like they can work in the evenings. They're working on project based. Oh, wow, we could reinvent what the workplace looks like. Like it really forced us to reimagine what our daily lives can look like. But the downside of all of this is that there has been that pressure building has led to, with the stress of the pandemic, a stress on mental health, right? So we collectively have lost it. We've seen it. You look on it, social media, you know, in the US, the political polarized shit show that was our government really also created an environment that really put pressure on us. And what you're seeing right now with this great resignation is people that are just so freaking tired of being in this earthquake of rumbling and figuring out like what this doesn't work anymore, but what's next? This is a perfect position to be in for that systemic change that we're looking for. If we play our cards right, like we can look at this as like as the shit show that it is, yes, and an opportunity to reinvent. And it does start with the self. It starts with like, wow, I'm walking like this doesn't work anymore. Like I don't want to do things this way. That's what happened for me last year, much in the same way that you were talking about, where I was like, I don't want to do like the way we were working with partners with Wonder Women Tech, and sponsors would come in and sponsor an event. We'd see them for the event, then they'd bounce out, and we like, what was the impact? What are we doing together? Are you really invested in creating more inclusion and belonging in your workplaces? The answer that the consensus was that you and I came to, and others in this field, is no, it's performative, right? So I don't want to live like that. I don't want to do business that way. I don't want to, as Lisa Mae Brunson, show up every single day busting my ass, having no work-life balance when it's not working anymore. And so it became a breakdown for me, much like you said. Your body broke down. You went through this whole entire space of rumbling. That's what happened for me. You asked the question of like, when do you know it's time to change? When do you know it's time to reinvent yourself? When you're feeling that pressure that you continue to ignore, you know, at that first sign of burnout that we all are familiar with, and we were familiar with it before 2020 happened. If you want to be very real and honest with yourself, you have felt burnout before. I had a huge crash in 2018 and an even bigger crash in 2019. And then the pandemic happened and it was like, shit, everything just fell apart. But, you know, something I told you before is I felt broken and I felt like I was falling apart, but I was falling apart to come together. And it was in those broken pieces back to the foundation of seeing what in the foundation that I had created, that I had built with inside myself. What are my core values? You led a wonderful exercise with the team about identifying those core values. So putting those core values together to build back that foundation to start the process of reinventing and reimagining. Because the truth is I think many of us have already fallen apart. Now it's time to come together. And what does that look like? Right? Going back to your definition about, you know, putting something together so that it looks different. But that's the process, right? It's that shattering of pieces that we've all just completely dispersed ourselves in. And then how are we coming together to build back something that, yes, looks different, but at its core remains intact. It remains with these core values that you've hopefully always have had.
I love that we are falling apart to fall back together, and that ultimately we do not need to be afraid of our broken pieces and what they mean. And I have a couple of people in the chat as well who can really resonate with it. And Lozzie is saying, I'm really resonated with this completely in what's been said, and may have may have to go soon. But Lozie, thank you so much for joining us and sharing how much this resonated with you. And Misha's saying the same thing. I can really identify with this so much. And this is the thing, going back to what you said, that we are all over the world right now. Our team alone is all over the world, but we are all over the world, and we are all feeling the same. We're all feeling the same symptoms of, being burnout, overwhelm, and everything else in between. And I agree with everything that you've said. And I think there definitely are some like really, really good indicators, that if you notice, well, first and foremost, if you at any point notice that you have stopped growing as a person or as a professional, you might feel bored and challenged, disinterested. That's probably a good indicator that you need to change. And we often feel that in our careers, we might feel unchallenged and disinterested, maybe in our personal lives. But that's, again, why it's so important to allowing space to be in touch with our feelings, so we can identify what is that is bugging us and where is the root cause for that. Another one would be, for me, a moment that you feel that your life no longer aligns with your values and your goals. And that's a big one. And this is something that I have done both in my professional and personal life, when I felt disconnected and misaligned with my values. And that's the most horrible feeling, where everything feels overwhelmed and that you've got no North Star to follow. And so again, when you do feel that overwhelm and that everything is in chaos and you've got a lot of noise in your head, that probably might mean that there's some work to do to reconnect with your purpose, with your goals, and with your values. The burnout, of course, you mentioned burnout. That's a big red flag and an alarm bell that it's time to reinvent and change something. But also, you've talked also about the pandemic and how much the pandemic has, as much as it's pushed us out of our comfort zone, it's also created a lot of circumstances and opportunities for us to change. And so, although, again, this pandemic has come with a great loss and grief, it equally has come with a lot of opportunities and a lot of silver linings and a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of overlooked opportunities. And so I do feel that, again, if it wasn't for pandemic, I probably wouldn't have started my business. And so the pandemic has, I think, pushed us out of our comfort zones in many different ways, whether we have embraced it as an opportunity or whether it's been a real push in a puddle of mud. But, often what we do is we resist the very same change that we desire. And change is a risk, and we are risk-averse creatures by nature. So it is important to assess the element and the part of our lives we wish to reinvent, and assess the impact, the risk, and the ways we can lean into it, and also understand the support that we need. And again, these are an important activities that we will do part of a corporate community, and especially in our Sunday self-care sessions, where we will have amazing guests coming and amazing experts coming on board to talk about these kind of things and do that internal audit and that mental hygiene. And so again, I invite everyone to join us for those. But returning to our conversation, that reinvention is an exploration. And exploration is growth. And this growth is not necessarily outward facing, but inward facing activity and process. And same as innovation, and we've talked about this, in other LinkedIn live sessions and with you as well. Same as innovation is a product of failure. Growth is a product of discomfort and stepping out of your comfort zone. But this growth and this process is what requires so much vulnerability and so much courage. And I would probably name you, Lisa Mae, as one of the probably top 3 people in my network and in my head when it comes to vulnerable and therefore courageous leadership. And I know this is something that you have had to learn the hard way as well. And as courage is a key factor for invention or reinvention, and vulnerability is at the core of the courage, as Brene Brown teaches us. Could you share some of your biggest lessons learned as you have embraced leading from a space of 100% vulnerability and truly realizing and immersing yourself in that power of courage? What are some of the key things that you have learned as a leader?
Well, I want to take it a step back and just share something because, as we're talking about getting to that point of recognizing when you need to reinvent or why, something else that came up for me was, and in my breaking point, one day I was laying down early 2021. I was just laying there because again, it was that it was coming out of burnout, trying to pivot with the times, trying to do the virtual summits and keeping up with the Joneses because the world had shifted so much. And I felt like I was supposed to do what everybody else was doing. Right. And this does lead to vulnerability. So I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't do it. And by the way, like, it's that perception that everyone else is doing it better or right? That like, but everybody is winging it. Something I've learned along the way and have interviewed hundreds of leaders and seen thousands of speakers on the Wonder Women Tech stage is that everyone, no matter their position in life, is winging it as well. And so one of the key indicators that kind of allowed me to see that, Lisa Mae, we can't do this anymore, was I laid down and I just said out loud to the God or the universe or whatever you want to identify with, but I was just like, I've lost my joy. And it was like, I literally said that out loud. It was in that moment that I was like, I don't feel good about anything. I don't feel good about my work. I don't feel good about Wonder Women Tech. I don't feel good about my team. I don't feel good about like what the hell is happening in the world. I didn't feel good about anything. I had no joy. And yes, there were external factors that contributed to that. But as you mentioned a second ago, this is very much an internal journey. Everything you do. And as a leader, it's even more so because how you are operating from the inside is reflected in your outer work, and it does trickle down to your team members. And I'm learning that that's something I'm continuing to learn as well in the process. If I don't have a connection to joy, or if I'm not feeding myself in the ways that I need to be fed to be strong, then I can't show up in the way that I need to show up. And so in that discovery, I was able to communicate that vulnerably with my team. Now, in the past, Lisa Mae would never do something like that. It was literally like, no, I got it. I will solve everything. Nobody will ever know that the fire is burning in the back, right? Like, this was not something that I was giving myself permission to. And I like to use that phrase because what I've learned through all of this is that you are the one standing in your own way. You're the one giving yourself the go ahead, right? Like, there is nobody else actually that tells you you can't do something. It's you. And so it's like giving yourself permission to be vulnerable. This environment that we find ourselves in has led to me being on my knees, has led to me not having all the answers at all, like not knowing what's next, like literally coming to the team and saying, I don't know what's next, guys. I'm going to lean on you. We're going to figure this out together. We're going to explore. We're going to workshop this. We're going to ideate, but I don't know what's coming down the pipeline. I don't know what's happening. And so, and you were part of that process, Baiba. It was very scary to kind of be that honest with the team, because I felt like they expected so much more from me. But what I discovered, Baiba, was that when I leaned into the team more, when I was like, I mean, you've seen me in tears. I'm like, I don't know what's next. I'm going through ABC too. The team was going through so much, and we came together in ways that corporate doesn't teach you to do, that it's not normal. You shouldn't be doing this. But I have found more loyalty and productivity and human connection in being a vulnerable leader and allowing my team to show up as well in vulnerable spaces and growing together in a strength that defies explanation. Having a team still stand beside me and us, even when we had no funding. That's true leadership, right? Is and for me, vulnerability has become a strength beyond anything I've ever imagined. Like, can you imagine, and those of you who are leading teams, can you imagine having a session where you tell your people, I don't know what's next. I don't know what the roadmap is right now. Or my biggest thing was coming in June and telling my entire team 2021 is canceled. We're not doing anything else. We're reinventing, we're reimagining, we're rebuilding, we're shutting everything down. That's exactly what we did. And it was the scariest thing. It was the scariest decision I ever had to make, but it was the only decision that Lisa Mae could make as a leader and as a person, as a human being who had reached her limit, right? To my surprise, the team was it was like a big like sigh of relief, like finally she gets it, like this is what we needed, this is what we're excited about, let's roll up our sleeves, let's reinvent, let's rebuild. That is what's waiting for you on the other side of this permission slip that you give yourselves. The courage to be vulnerable and then just learn from that vulnerability about what you need to grow, what you need to show up fully. I hit that wall, Baiba. I knew that I couldn't continue to go and operate in the status quo. I knew that I wasn't the best leader in the world right now. I knew that I needed help. And I knew that I needed to pour into myself so that we can continue to grow. And that is a risk, as you said. It's a change that I hated to make, but it was paramount. And we're still in the growing pains of the change. Like every day still feels like, holy shit. Like we're moving into a direction that is where we need to go and where I'm excited to go. And I have found my joy again, because the joy has been in this rebirth process of reimagining, right? The possibilities are endless now. Before I was in a black hole, and you know it. For those of you that are watching now, listening, or whatever later on down the line, like when you're feeling like you're in a black hole and you have lost your joy, and sometimes it is depression, which I've had to grapple with, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it really is that you've hit a wall, you've lost your joy, you need to reinvent and go back to the mats. You need to think outside of the boxes, and you need to take those risks, because the truth of it is, and something that Baiba and I, we are in the same thought process of really designing our programs, our ecosystems, our work around connecting humanity and having a consciousness lens, right? That's not normal in business, but we knew that this was something we had to do. We had to have these vulnerable conversations like we're having right now. We knew that we couldn't keep operating the way that we've been operating. So we stayed true to our North Star, as you mentioned before. We stayed true to that North Star to rebuild and reinvent. And so it doesn't seem so far outside of the box, but it's definitely outside of the box from the world's perspective, right? And so don't be afraid to go against the grain. This is the perfect time to do that, because none of us are getting it right, and all of us have to rebuild.
I love that. Thank you so much for your vulnerability of sharing that story and that journey that you have been through, and I have been through with you at parts of that. It has, and again, it has been challenging, but again, we often have come together as well and said we really learned from this moment of discussion, debate, heated debate about ourselves and about how we can lead better and be better leaders. And as you were talking, and you mentioned a couple of times how scary it is. And as you were talking, I was thinking, this is scary because I have never seen anyone in a large organization do these kinds of things, because it's scary. And we not necessarily, as as leaders have explored our full range of fear that is holding us back. And it's really interesting because as I was thinking yesterday about our conversation, and as we were going to be talking about courage and vulnerability, I picked up the good old Brene Brown's Dare to
I'm
Be
reading that.
Are you? And it's there's a
That's
beautiful quote that I really want to read out, where she quotes Joseph Campbell about fear, and she uses this Star Wars analogy about where Luke is going into the cave, but ultimately the whole purpose of that is to go into the cave of facing your fear. But we are so afraid of going into that dark cave because we're afraid of what we're gonna discover and see there. And the quote that she has put in the book is that when you find the courage to enter that cave, or ultimately to face your fear, when you find the courage to enter that cave, you're never going into it to secure your own treasure or your own wealth. You face your fears to find the power and wisdom to serve others. And I found that so profound, and it really resonated, and it really made me think about you and I and our job, our work, and the work of so many of our colleagues in this space as well, to how much of our fear we are facing because we are serving others, and we are not only accountable to ourselves, but our purpose is much, much bigger. And that is probably another reason why we have to keep reinventing ourselves, because we are accountable to other people. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that and from where you stand, anyone can be a leader, right? And so for those of us that lead teams or lead initiatives where others are impacted, you do have a sense of responsibility to others that can sometimes, well, at least in my case, defy reasoning because it's like, I mean, I grew up, I'm the oldest of six kids, but five growing up. And so, like, I've always had this take charge leadership ability. Like, I'm responsible for everybody's, and it's not just everybody's well being. I've taken it to a whole other level. Like, I'm responsible for your life. Okay. So, like, I have an unrealistic view of that, but like, so many of us do have that, right? It's like, I am responsible for you. I am accountable to how you grow. And good leaders, really excellent leaders, care about the growth of their teams. You're raising other leaders, and I always say this in the team. We have interns that work with us, and we treat them like leader, like they are responsible for the what's happening inside of the entire organization, inside of the entire vision. They own a piece of that vision, right? So responsible leaders, empathic leaders raise other leaders. And so there is a level of responsibility that weighs on you. And so I think that also lends itself to the criticism and the inner, like, dialogue that like really just happens when you want to be a good leader and you feel like you're not. And I'll say, like, 2020, 2021, I was sick a lot. You followed me on social media, you will know that we lost our social media director to cancer. We went through like a whole bunch, like, it was a shit show of a 2 years. In fact, yesterday I had a friend that said, like, Lisa Mae, if I had gone through all that you went, like all the things you've gone through, I'm surprised you're not more cynical. And I'm just like, if I was cynical, then I would be very scared for the world right now, because like we need people like myself. And I'm not saying I'm holding up the world, by the way, but we need people that care enough about humanity that are willing to show up even in spite of the challenges, right? And so I have that inner dialogue that is very critical. I'm constantly checking myself, that, like, that's something I need to work on. Like, actually, that's a thing that I want to reinvent in 2022, is to give myself more grace in that I don't have to be a perfect leader, or that a perfect leader can be vulnerable in the messy ways. Like, sometimes life really is hard. And like 2 days ago, I went and cried and hid in a car, and I was just cried, and I was like, oh my God. And then I led a meeting. So it's it's like but then I was critical about myself and behind the scenes, like, oh my God, you should be having it together. You know what I mean? So it's, we're not in this reinvention process and the reimagining process. It's not, it is a process. As you mentioned earlier, Biba, it's a progression of change. It's a progression of small changes that you might have setbacks. I think you said something about it's hills and valleys. It's not linear, and it's not easy it's not even a comfortable journey, but it is a rewarding journey, right? Because at the end of the day, when you are tapped into what you really actually want to be doing, how you really want to show up in the world, and you operate from that space and that ethos that you've identified your value systems. Imagine if Google, or any, the leaders inside of Google and Microsoft and all of these big tech companies and pharma companies and metaverse or whatever, Facebook, meta face, whatever is, like, imagine if the leaders inside of those organizations operated from this ethos and was like, you know what, like, let's reinvent and let's reimagine the way that we operate. Let's look at these data privacy, guidelines, and make it really about the people, right? Like, what if we freaking operated from our value systems, right? What if Trump did? Okay, I'm not going to go there. But like, this is this, like, think about the possibilities of reinvention and reimagining self. It becomes a responsibility, but not just for others, Biba, but for yourself. First and foremost, I had to be accountable for myself. I had to say, Lisa Mae, it's not working for Lisa Mae first before I trickled it down to Wonder Woman Tech and everything else I'm doing, right? You have to get very, very honest. That's the courage. That's the courage point. That's ground zero, is being very honest with yourself about where you broke, and be willing to pick up the pieces, get the people in order, get your resources together, sign up for the classes, reimagine and reinvent, and start back building the foundation. That's where it starts.
Love it. And speaking of the picking up the pieces, Lottie has shared a beautiful quote that she says comes from kintsugi, which is a Japanese. Japanese use this to mend broken pottery, and arguably the end result is more beautiful than the original one. And she shared a quote saying, "When you think you are broken, you can pick up the pieces, put them back together, and learn to embrace the cracks." I love that. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing
they
that.
use melted gold to put the pieces back together.
No wonder why the end goal looks better than before in that case. But and Lottie goes on saying that vulnerability is beautiful, and if a person is vulnerable with her, it says to her that they trust
Yes.
and respect. Absolutely, and hence again why, again, for instance, Brené Brown and many other leaders' work, their life's work is about in distilling and instilling this vulnerability and courage in their leaders, because we often talk, and I often work with organizations, that one of the first things that come to me is saying, we do not have a culture of trust, which very directly goes back to that. And Idris, I want to say it's Idris or Idris, apologies if I say your name wrong, but has said that we cannot do it, enter the goal, without a team. And I guess, again, that comes back to that, it is important to surround yourself with a tribe, with a community.
None of us are alone. None of us are alone. Even in the reinvention process, as you were birthing yourself, Iva, and I was birthing myself, we leaned on each other, we leaned on other people. And I do want to caution against feeling like you are alone and that you're supposed to reinvent yourself alone. It's a journey with the community. It's a community. I mean, back in the days, that's how we actually operated as a human ecosystem. Was we had our tribes, we had our communities, we had our, spaces in which we worked together harmoniously.
Absolutely. And so, as our time is slowly coming to an end together, and we've covered quite a lot of ground, I would love to for you to share your 3 pro tips on a successful reinvention of self that people who are currently chasing that new year, new me energy right now can take away. And I say pro trips because you definitely are a pro reinventing yourself.
Oh my God. Look, I'm the student and the teacher. I'm learning every single day. And I mean, that would be the pro tip number one, is that recognizing that, we are all growing and learning, and evolution is also not linear. Like a lot of us can view our setbacks or the need for reinvention as a failure. So something I was reflecting on this morning when I was thinking about something that's come up in this process. So you're part of the leadership team with Wonder Women Tech. We've added new people, and something that has come up for me, and this is the first time you're hearing this too, is that here's a moment of vulnerability. I spent, I cry, okay? But I spent 9 years building Wonder Women Tech, and leading it from a space, and having some success with it. I mean, we've done some amazing things, right? But at the end of the day, there were so many things. I was burned out. There were so many things I took on by myself that I wish I had outsourced or got the people around me, that I wish I didn't have that mentality that I had to have all the answers and do it myself, because I did. And so many founders and leaders do feel this way. So I know I'm not alone. But something that's come up for me in the reinvention process is feeling like, holy shit, I didn't know what I was doing. And I made some mistakes, and I could have avoided some failures, right? And then this was yesterday. And then this morning, I was kind of thinking about that piece. And I said to myself, because I was so hung up on the idea of not failing. So like in the entire journey of my career, in the back of the head is not failure. No, don't fail, don't fail, don't fail. But of course you do. Of course you make mistakes along the way. But I was so busy oh, don't do this, don't do that I missed the opportunities to grow earlier. Right? Like I didn't get to learn from the quote unquote mistakes. I didn't allow myself to fail forward until it was past, till you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that was an opportunity. Right? So I would say that is a key lesson right there, is like allow yourself that space to evolve as you evolve. And it's okay if you've quote unquote made mistakes. You're still here. Right? And the other thing is grace. I talked about that earlier. And, I named my dog Gracie for a reason when I got her, because something that all of us can probably identify with is we are hard on ourselves. We are our worst critics. And it's a cliche, but it's so damn true. Like we are so hard on ourselves. And those of us that are founders or leaders or build or want to build something, or just in general, right? We are hard on ourselves. Give yourself grace. You don't have to be perfect. That idea is like crap, right? And then the final thing I would say is, find your joy. I still right here. It's right here. So in June, when I had, or actually this was May. In May, when I had that come to Jesus moment of like, I've lost my joy. Or actually this was March. Sorry, this was March, because then we decided to do the Ignite Summit. I did a free, on the whim, off the cuff Ignite Summit. And it was centered around the reasons why I lost my joy. And I ended up writing 3 pages. Now, first I was just trying to write one, guys. I was trying to write 1 page of things that bring me joy. And I ended up writing 3 full pages of the things that bring me joy. And I mean, arts and crafts festivals, watching people have fun, spontaneous adventures, bargains and freebies. I mean, who doesn't love a freebie? But it's it's like I spent the time, and this is a good time to do it. I mean, it's the beginning of the year when we're already writing our goals. Well, how about we write the things that bring us joy? Right? Instead of just go like recover the joy. That's a strong foundation to start from. And then piggybacking off that really quickly is what Biba gave us to do, which was writing down our values. What are your personal values, and what are the organizational values, or whatever the values of your vision or your team, whatever it is that you've got going on. Like, what is that? Because that's going to be that North Star to build your foundation from. So if any of you do take on the exercise of writing your joys, please share it with us, because I'd love to see if anybody, I mean, I just shared a couple, but I'm going to share a few more in social media because that was fun. But that would be my 3.5 or 4 pro tips for reinventing and reimagining yourself.
Thank you for that. And I love and you use a specific word, and it completely left me about sort of finding again your joy, but you use a specific word for that, and maybe you'll remind it. It started with R, reinventing, or
I don't know. Cultivate it, build it, create it.
I'll have to go back to the recording and
rediscover.
because it was a brilliant word, and sort of, finding your joy again, regaining your joy, I think you said. I love that.
Regaining, yeah.
And
how funny that it was just, I just cleaned my office, and it was right here. So timely.
What a beautiful thing to immerse yourself into as you're building your, because often we are building our goals from a space of fear, or from a space of we are pushed to do certain things, we have to achieve certain things. So actually this exercise of listing what brings us joy is such a powerful way to just keep ourselves honest about whether actually our goals that we want to, and our aspirations that we want to reach for this year, do they actually bring us joy? And if they are completely miles apart, there's probably a little bit of reinvention to do there as well to bring them closer and realign them. And obviously we've talked a lot about art today, and Japanese art, and picking up pieces and those kinds of things. So I would really invite people to seeing yourself as an artist or as a sculptor, because reinvention is an art. You are a work of art. So keep on walking around yourself as the sculptor with no emotional attachment. And when you don't like something, don't get upset. Instead, get to work and get to that reinvention work. Focus inward. Don't address just the symptoms. My job is making me burnt out, or I am overweight, which I think we all are after holiday season, so I need to work on my abs. But actually, the reasons and the roots for those emotions and those states are not just an abs workout or leaving your job. And those are just immediate reliefs. So really, I would invite you to either zoom out or dig deep, however you want to do that, but to really, really see, to really focus on the internal parts and approach.
I want to mention one quick thing really quick, because the other thing is, as you're confronting this honesty and others are mirroring it back, it will be difficult to hear things or to learn things. And so, like, to learn, to be confronted with new ideas. I've been through that. So be willing to listen, and before you react, or before you be defensive in the process, because you will be defensive in the process of reinventing. So I just wanted, because I was thinking that's a huge part of what this breakdown has been for me, is there are literal times where I'm like, Lisa Mae, just listen, just absorb, like just learn this new information. Like, you don't even have to do anything with it yet. Just learn, listen. So
I love that. And I guess then I'll piggyback my third pro tip on the back of that, saying that surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth, and who will challenge you, and who will ask you some tough questions and give you some tough feedback, but who will do that from a space of love and care. And as Lisa Mae just said, just be open to this information and to this feedback if it comes from a space of love and care. And I just, absolutely love this conversation. And I think it's a very, very timely conversation. And Lozzie also mentioned that this conversation links perfectly with something that I wrote and shared on LinkedIn earlier. I legally changed my name on Monday because I wanted to be more authentic self in all aspects of my life. And I love that. And congratulations, Lozzie. We are giving you virtual applause for that. Well done
Congratulations.
for facing that, for having courage to do that. So yeah, keep on sharing your journeys with reinventing yourself. And I really do hope that this conversation has allowed you to look at that new year, new me energy a slightly different, and realize that it is rewarding, it is beautiful, but it is hard work. So do prepare yourself for that, so you're not disappointed with yourself when you didn't set up yourself for success in the first place. And, once again, to finish up with it, I do want to say that on the 19th of January, we are launching our amazing DEI community. I've got some people already in the green room, which I'm looking forward to let in soon. So make sure you add your name to the waiting list, and we're launching on the 19th of January. And I look forward to having a session with you there and seeing you there. Elisa Mae, thank you so much for being with me here and having this conversation and being so vulnerable and sharing so many great pro tips.
Hey, look, I need a trip.
I think we all do a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much for being with me in this space and sharing so much very raw, unplugged information and insights, and being with us here today. I really appreciate you for that.
Thank you, Baiba. And I just want to say, I talk about this a lot, saying yes, saying yes to things, because you never know what comes from that. And, when you asked me to be part of this conversation, even though I was like in the midst of a lot, I said yes. And this morning I woke up kind of challenged with a couple of things, and I was like, oh, I got this talk. But then, and I literally, this is a true story, I literally was like brushing my hair, and I was like, well, you said yes. And like, why don't you shift your mindset and be excited? And so then I did. I was like, I'm excited. Like, I'm excited about this conversation. I love Baiba. Like, we always have a good conversation. Like, you don't have to take the outside in. And so, yeah, I'm glad that I showed up. And then the other thing was, I was like, show up, Lisa Mae, just show up. So sometimes it literally, like, it is that fake it till you have your joy. And you never know, like, if you're going to be just so full of love. And that this conversation has just lifted me up. I'm excited to go into my day with this loving energy and positive energy. Thank you, Baiba.
And your 3 sheets of joy. And if you
I'm gonna read them again. I wrote this last.
You wrote a book for yourself, What Creates Your Joy. So you've got no excuse. But before we go, I want to share one last comment from Misha, who's also been vulnerable and sharing her moment of courage as she came out last year. We celebrate you, Misha.
Oh, yay! Misha, congratulations for authenticity. It's so important. I came out at 30 as a bisexual woman, and I thought that was late. So I'm so excited that people are still being authentic at all stages of life and in their careers. And it's so important to, like, for people to show up, changing your names, changing your pronouns. Like, this is what we need right now more than ever, is for everyone in the world to really just embrace who they are on all aspects and all levels.
We celebrate you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who've been here with us today, for all of your reflections and being so courageous and joining us in this conversation. And for those who are watching in replay, feel free to leave in comments as well, as they will be monitored. And Lisa Mae, thank you so much for joining us today. They will be monitored. That's my corporate talk. Thank you so much for joining. And I'm also going to be bringing this joy and loving energy in my day as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody. And I look forward to seeing how you blossom and shine.
And share your books of joy. I want to read some books of joy.
We will.